Are you ready? Turn it up! Yeah! Welcome to the noise inside your head. No holding back, we live on the edge. Let's go!
And welcome back into another episode of Sage Against the Machine, the podcast that tells you how it is, speaking truth to power. We are blunt and we are the working class. I am Nathan Sage, former United States Senate candidate here in Iowa, and I am joined once again by my friend and colleague, Dr. Bob Leonard, he's a retired radio journalist who writes bylines in the New York Times, Time, USA Today, and many more publications, and he writes all of his stuff at Deep Midwest Politics and Culture on Substack. Dr. Bob Leonard, once again, say hello.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
This week's episode is going to be a fun week. We have the candidate for the Iowa Secretary of Agriculture, Chris Jones, joining us on the podcast. Chris, say hello.
Hello. Glad to be with two of my favorite guys here this morning.
There we go. Chris Jones, I don't have it. Normally I do these intros for everybody, and it seems like every intro I have has some mistake in it. Like I've had Josh Turek, and I had his middle name wrong. Lindsey James, I actually had her denomination, for her religion wrong. I had all these little notes wrong. Chris Jones, I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to let you do your intro. Tell us who you are, where you're coming from, and why you're doing what you're doing.
Well, I am a 65-year-old man that lives in Iowa City. I hail from Ankeny, Iowa. My folks bought their house in Ankeny in 1967, sight unseen, for $18,000. There were 6,000 people that lived there. My mom and brother and sister still live there, and I go back there and I think, what is this place? But anyway, I went to Simpson College in Indianola. I got a PhD in chemistry from Montana State University. I worked for many years in Minnesota, managing an environmental testing lab and then doing consulting work for water and wastewater utilities. I came back to Iowa in 2003, and when I took a job at the Des Moines Waterworks, I managed the laboratory at the Waterworks. Was there 8 years, then went over to the ag side, worked for 4 years at the Iowa Soybean Association. They had an environmental group, and so I worked with farmers and other people in agriculture while I was there. In 2015, I was sort of recruited to come over to the University of Iowa and manage the network of water quality sensors that we hear talked about so much here these days. The legislature is going to fund them, not fund them, fund them, not fund them. Ultimately, it was not funded. While I was at the university, I wrote a blog that was somewhat controversial, I guess you could say, and some people in the legislature didn't like what I was writing, and I just decided I didn't want to put up with that and decided to retire at the time. And so then I've written a Substack the last 3 years. About a year ago, I was convinced by some people to do this, what I'm doing now, this crazy task that I'm doing now, which is running for Iowa Secretary of Agriculture. And so here I am, and that's my story.
There we go. Chris Jones, I heard about you from Dr. Bob Leonard before you even ran or before I even met you. I knew the issues with water quality, and that was one thing that on my campaign, I did a lot about trying to bring up to talk to people when I did my 99 county tour. But what stood out to me the first time I think I saw you really speak was we were in Iowa Falls, I believe, at an event there, and I know that I'm known for bringing passion and bringing my authenticity to the floor, but I felt like you were the first person I've heard talk about the water issues with the passion that you have. And to be clear, for me, it was a little alarming because it was like, here's a guy that knows way more about the issues going on in agriculture and water quality in Iowa than I could fathom, and you are very passionate about what we're seeing and what we're doing. So I'm excited, one, for your candidacy, to be able to have somebody like you running that we need in Iowa, and two, to have you on the podcast to talk about the issues. And I don't want to talk about water quality nonstop because I know that's what you've had probably during your time running. But a first question I have for you is, you said people kind of came to you and wanted you to do this, but you've been out there now. You've been this candidate now. What have you been seeing since you've been talking to people across the state? What have people been chatting with you about? And what are the issues? I know obviously water quality, but what are the other issues that got people kind of stirred up right now?
So, firstly, people say, yeah, I speak with this with some passion, but I would say that I speak with it with some frustration.
Yeah.
And because I've been close to the issue for so long and seen the dysfunction in Iowa about making progress towards solving this real fundamental quality of life issue. I mean, if you don't have clean water to drink, what can you count on, right, in a state? And so I've been frustrated at the progress. I've been frustrated that both parties have failed, both political parties have failed at this. And so that was one of my objectives here with my candidacy, was to try to get the Democratic Party to embrace this as an issue, a common good issue. And I think I've succeeded at that. And when I go out and talk to people, I think one of the things that I've discovered, I think you asked me what I've seen here, is that there is a lot of pent up frustration. A lot of people share my frustration, and it's pent up, and they have not had a person to sort of scratch that itch for them. And so a lot of times I ask myself, well, is enthusiasm for the campaign because, I'm good, or is it because, I was the only one occupying this space for so long and this frustration was nagging people so badly they just wanted anybody to carry the message here. And is that the source of the enthusiasm? Is it less me that they just, or is it just that they wanted someone? And so I don't have the answer to that question, but I think people are ready for a change. They're very desperate. They're desperate for a change here in the quality of our water and the environmental outcomes that we get from Iowa's agricultural production system.
Before I let Dr. Bob get to a question, I want to add to that really quick. I think that based off of my time out there on the 99 county tour and the frustration you mentioned, that the frustration I've seen from Iowans and the anger that I've seen from Iowans in regards to a lot of topics, especially cancer rates and drinking water, I think, the thing that stands out about you, Chris, is that you talked about it's the frustration comes out. So people like people that they can align with. And I think that when you speak the way you speak about the frustration, that's what makes you the candidate that we need. Not someone up there just speaking words. Anybody up there can do it, but you have to have the oomph or the passion or the authenticity that you have. And I think that frustration is what people pick up on, because they are, and that's what, because I was in I can't remember the town, but I was man, it's like Rockwell City, I think, and I had this guy come up to me and he was shaking my hand and he was just pissed off, and I'm Dale and I'm mad and I'm angry, and I'm like, yeah, and he's like, I want to hear you speak, and he's just mad. And it was like so many people all across Iowa are feeling the same feeling, and they don't feel like, you said, the itch to scratch. They don't feel like anybody's listening. And so when you finally get a candidate like yourself that can actually speak about the issues from a very intellectual point and actually have the data and the information to back up your speaking about, I think that resonates so much more. So I would say, again, I don't think it's necessary. I think it's that combination, but I think the way you speak about it, the way I've heard you speak about it, really draws the attention. That's why I think you're the candidate that we need.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think, look, you've done politics. It's really easy to just talk abstractly about subjects, right? And it's almost lazy, right? We can get lazy and just speak abstractly about stuff like water quality. Well, yeah, we all want clean water, right? That's just a joke almost anymore, that that's the line people use. Yeah, I'm for clean water. We all want clean water. Well, they obviously have not given it any thought, energy, or anything. They haven't given 2 minutes of thinking. And so, whereas I've spent, 25, 30 years thinking about this, and so it comes naturally to me. And so, some of this authenticity and effectiveness, maybe is just as a result that I've spent so much time on this where other politicians have not.
Absolutely, you've lived that life. Dr. Bob Leonard, I know you're friends with Chris, but you got to ask him a non-friendly question. You got to get at him, right? Go, Dr. Bob.
Get right at him. Well, that wasn't my plan. But I can do it.
Hey, I can handle Bob.
Yeah, I know.
Well, let me say first that you left out an important part of your biography. You left out the fact that when you were writing your blog at the University of Iowa, Iowa Republican legislators came and demanded that you be shut down and made threats against funding to the Iowa Flood Center. If they don't silence you, what was it? $200 million that was in peril. These are the kind of people that we're talking about, the Republicans in the legislature silencing you and making threats against the university, and threats that Iowans wouldn't know, and threats and actions that Iowa wouldn't know about the quality of our water. So I think that's an important thing to share as well. Did I get that right?
Yeah, but I don't want to run on this sort of martyr persona. I want to run on the merits of my ideas and the positions and the platform that I've developed. And so, granted, people love a martyr, right? There's no doubt about that. But I don't want that to be the centerpiece of my campaign. I want this to be idea driven. And so I don't talk about that at events. I know there's some awareness of it all. But look, it's just like I wrote in that last piece. My last piece that I wrote on my university blog was, I said I knew this whole time I was writing my blog that I was a dog chasing cars. And even once in a while, an old three-legged dog like me can get too close to the wheels, right? And that happened. And so, it wasn't like I was totally oblivious to the fact that, something could happen by writing the blog. But, one of the things that drove me to write the way I did was, Republicans supposedly are so desirous of free speech, right? Desirous of free speech. They wanted free speech on campus. We now have the Center for Intellectual Freedom here at the University of Iowa that supposedly is providing opportunity for people to speak freely that maybe feel like they haven't had that opportunity before. And here they did not like me exercising, my free speech rights, right? And so I think everything that happened with me kind of exposed the hypocrisy of the Republican positions when it comes to higher education. And so I think that's a larger story here. The smaller story is me departing the university because these guys in the legislature got their foo-foos hurt.
Okay, so now let me ask the tough question. I'm sure you're prepared for this. You're the biggest critic of ethanol that I know, and Iowa's economy is based upon ethanol. And Iowa's what, 45th or 46th in the country in terms of where our economy is? How do we reconcile your anti-ethanol perspective with our economic growth and the survivorship of farms?
So look, we're not going to go cold turkey off ethanol, right? It's we have 42 ethanol plants, 7,000 people work there. If you have one of those jobs, it means a lot to you, right? Naturally. And so we're not going to be throwing people to the curb and just abandoning the ethanol industry. We have no power to do that. The legislature has no power. I would have no power as Secretary of Agriculture. It would take a change in federal policy. But I think the state, needs to ask itself, is growing corn for ethanol the best economic choice here for Iowa? We just presume that this is the best thing we can do with this land. And I would like to talk about that idea. Are there other things that we can do with this land that would make Iowa more prosperous and would make our economic outcomes and our water quality better? And I think there's other things we could do here. And look, you guys know has this consolidation in corn and soybean and consolidation in livestock and then the ethanol industry, has it brought prosperity to rural Iowa? It has not. It has not. And so if what we're doing is not working, if it's not preventing the migration of people from our small towns, if it's not preventing consolidation of farms, how can we rest our laurels on this ethanol as such a great thing for the state? I would suggest to you that there's other things we could do here that would be better. Now, will it require some transition? Will it require public money? Will it require some pain? Yeah, of course it will, right? Of course it will. But ultimately, I think it would do the state well to start strategizing about what comes after ethanol. About 8 to 9 million acres of our land is used to grow corn for ethanol. That's a huge area. That's 1/4 of the state. Look, let's start talking about transitioning some of those acres to something else. And would that benefit the state better than using that land to produce ethanol?
One thing I wanted to ask you, you mentioned it there about, the rural. One thing I talked about specifically was I feel like there's an attack on rural America across this country. The government's designing that way because they're, and you talked about it, the rural America, especially rural Iowa, is almost evaporating at times. So talk about, we talk about family farms. One thing I talked about a lot was, the programs that family farms need. They need diversity and to be able to keep having those small family farms, keep the family on the farm. So the question I have for you is when it comes to this, like how do we fix the ethanol problem? How do we make sure our water is drinkable and clean, but still be able to have those small family farms that we're seeing close down over and over continue like have a chance to flourish again? Because I truly believe, and I knew you guys do, that to be able to have those small rural communities that are thriving and to the peak where they need to be, we need those small family farms and those mid-sized family farms.
Well, first, I'd say the term family farm has come to almost have no meaning because the industry has balderized the term. And so, to the industry, every farm is a family farm. If there's two related people farming that ground, it's a family farm. And, I think the vision most of us have of the family farm is, a family with children, maybe an extended family, living at least a somewhat agrarian sort of existence that has a diverse assemblage of crops and a menagerie of animals. And that's the image that we have of the family farm. Do we like that image? Yeah, we do. We love it, right? That's the vision that most of us have of Iowa growing up, people of my generation. I would suggest at this point that trying to return to that model would also produce better environmental outcomes. And so how do you get back to that model? What you need to do is diversify farms. And so by that, I mean you need a greater assemblage of crops. You can't just do it with 2 crops, with corn and soy. You can't do it with animals and CAFOs. The truth of the matter is, if you're just growing corn and soy, and especially if you don't have livestock, that's pretty easy, right? It only takes about 6 or 8 weeks out of the year, and one person can farm 5,000 acres, right? And so when you're just growing GMO corn and soy, look, you don't need an extended family there to help you. This machinery is so sophisticated. The GMO crops these crop geneticists are geniuses. They've done a fantastic job where these crops really don't need much work. It's 2 weeks of planting, 2 weeks spraying, 2 weeks harvesting, and that's it. And so if we're going to get back to family farm that we all want, we need diversity on these farms. We need more crops. We need livestock and pastoral systems. We need to grow food crops. We need to grow forage crops for cattle. That's how you get the family farm back. And that's how you revitalize rural Iowa.
Piggyback off that really quick before I let Dr. Bob jump back in. When it comes to that, I've seen like a lot, especially up in Northwest Iowa when I was out there doing the 999 was, you know, you're not going to get these Republican farmers to vote for Democrats, right? So how are you going to do this? How are you going to get Republicans to vote? So my question to you is, and especially being Secretary of Ag in a state that they say is red, you got to get Republicans to believe in what you're trying to do. How do you get people on that side that even despite getting tariffs and foreclosures and everything they're going through, stick to that Republican side? How do you get those people to vote for a Democrat for Iowa Secretary of Ag?
Well, there's two things here. One is governing, and one is getting elected. And so you have to do the second thing first. You have to get elected. So what is the strategy to get as many votes as you need to get elected? And right now, I believe the strategy is to focus on water and water quality because so many people are frustrated with that issue. Are farmers in Northwest Iowa going to vote for me? Well, as you say, likely not. And so it's, running a campaign time is limited, money is limited. Do you go up from Iowa City, where I live, up to Northwest Iowa, 6 hours and try to convince six farmers to vote for you? Well, that's not how you win a campaign, right? You
Mhm.
have to, uh, decide where the votes are and get the votes. And so, look, I want farmers to vote for me. One of part of my rhetoric here is I want more farmers. I don't want less farmers. I want more farmers. We need more farmers farming a smaller average number of acres. That's the way to go. But I don't lose sleep at night thinking about those six farmers in Lyon County that are maybe going to vote for me. Those six are probably going to vote for me whether I come up there or not. Um, and so there's calculations here on what you do. Now, I think it's important for a candidate for Secretary of Agriculture to demonstrate some cred on agriculture, right? And so I think I do that. I think sometimes people are surprised at how much I know about farming, even though I'm not a farmer. I don't claim to be. I don't claim to have ever been a farmer. Mike Naig, he claims to be a farmer. Well, he's a full-time Secretary of Agriculture, right? He's full-time Secretary of Agriculture. Do we really believe he's a farmer? I think that's not very accurate. And so I want farmers to vote for me. A lot of what I write and talk about is geared toward farmer ears and eyes. But I'm not running to Northwest Iowa. I mean, I have been up there. I've been to Sioux City. I've been to Westfield. I've been to Sioux City twice. Been to Fort Dodge. I'm up there working. But the truth is, the water quality issues are going to drive this, I think.
Absolutely. Dr. Bob?
Yeah, everybody's for the small farmer. Republicans say they're for the small farmer. They say that all of the time. And you know what? Let's just take them at their word that they really believe in the small family farm. Problem is, the agribusinesses don't. They do not believe in the small family farm. Small family farms work against their interests. What they would like, what the agribusinesses would like, and I'll just illustrate this, was what a friend who managed a co-op in the area once said to me. He said, I just don't like servicing, 1,300 farmers in the county. If we just had 300 farmers, it would be so much easier for me. And so the consolidation is the goal of industry, and they don't care what country, the ethanol or the corn or the soybeans. They don't care what country it comes from. They're multinational corporations. And I'll say this: I think that the depopulation of rural spaces is the goal. They don't want us in rural spaces. And they should, and because, and that's illustrated by the fact they don't want us to monitor our water quality. If we're in rural spaces, we can see the atrocities that are going on the landscape. I mean, they're denuding hills in southern Marion County that I don't know what purposes they're going to put them to, but I'm presuming that it's some kind of a farming operation. But so Make no mistake, the depopulation of rural places around the world is the goal of the agribusinesses because it increases efficiency
Mhm.
and they can control people more easily. So I think that's where we start talking about this is you can talk about family farms all you want if you're a Republican. However, the masters, the Monsantos, who Mike Naig used to work for you, they don't want that. They want a few farmers, big machinery, and I think you wrote about this recently, Chris, is they want the people operating the machinery to be overseas. And
Mhm.
it's just like if we point this out, it just the facts are laying out there right in front of us. But I don't think most people know it. If you would just everybody says, oh, we're all for family farms. Well, agribusinesses aren't. You agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the whole ag advocacy world and the agribusiness likes to likes the public to retain this image of the 1950s farmer, right? It's in their best interest for the public to believe that, while at the same time they're doing things that reduce the number of farmers, reduce the number of farms. And we look at the biggest farms. Well, guess what? They buy their inputs, they get their inputs discounted, right? The bankers want to work with the big farmers. Veterinarians, a huge issue. Veterinarians. If you have a small livestock herd, small 50 head of cattle, 100 head of hogs, whatever, you can't get a veterinarian to come to your farm, right? Because they all want to go to these big CAFOs where there's 5,000 hogs. If you're raising livestock at a small scale, you can't find people to process the meat, right? The big packing houses, they don't want to deal with small farmers. It's an inconvenience. It's an annoyance. And so, as you say, this consolidation, that's what they want. That's what they want. It's easier to sell anhydrous ammonia to 5 people than it is to 500 people. And so everybody sees what's happening. Everybody sees what's happening that pretty soon north of Interstate 80, you're going to need maybe 2 or 3 farmers per county. And the next step is that there's some guy sitting at a laptop in Mumbai, India, farming 50,000 acres of Iowa farmland that's owned by a hedge fund or some oligarch or some billionaire. That's what it's coming to. And it's coming fast, believe me.
You
You know,
said something. Oh,
you keep going, Dr. Bro. Go.
well, you said something earlier about, oh, it's important to, well, let me just start here. Republicans are going to say that your proposals are going to cost too much money. They're going to say, where's the money coming from to shift this? And the thing is that they only think about costs. What you're proposing are investments that will yield returns. It's not just the cost. If you stop at the cost, nobody would ever do anything. If we talk about the investments and what you're proposing to invest, can you share some of the products of those investments that will yield benefits for Iowans?
Look, all this discussion assumes that we're not paying for the existing system. We are. $1 billion a year, more than $1 billion a year comes into Iowa, from USDA programs, right? We just had the tariff relief. I think Trump's going to give 12 billion, something like that, to farmers nationwide. I think about another billion of that's going to come to Iowa. And so we're paying for this system as it is. Another thing we pay for is the pollution. And so we look at the costs of this system downstream in Des Moines and other cities. Des Moines, the cost for water treatment, of course, is very large. We see Governor Reynolds and Mike Naig produce their farm to faucet program. That's $319 million. $319 million of your money, your taxpayer money, they're going to channel to water and wastewater plants to deal with this pollution issue from agriculture. So the existing system has costs to us. And so, sure, when we transition to something more resilient and more sustainable, are there going to be costs? Yeah, of course there will be, no doubt. But will the cost to society from this new system be less? Of course, they will be. Yes, there'll be less. There'll be less nitrate pollution. There'll be less pesticide. There'll be less cancer. Um, these sorts of things can result from a different production system. And so, as you say, yes, it's investments to produce the outcomes that we want, both monetary and societal outcomes that are going to benefit everyone. The existing system is not designed to benefit everyone. It's designed to benefit a few, right? And so I think that's what people want. They want a system that's going to benefit everyone. And will there be some costs? Yeah, no doubt about it, right? There's no free lunch on this stuff, no free lunch in nature. And so another thing I'll point out here is ethanol. Since we talked about ethanol, look, the state has given gas stations in the state of Iowa $70 million to put in extra pumps for ethanol, for E15 and E10. $70 million. We've given gas stations to force ethanol into everybody's gas tank. And, local foods, for example, is something people desperately want in Iowa. We know that they desperately want it. The legislature gave that program $200,000 in the last session. So tell me where the cost is.
One thing I wanted to ask you really quick, I wanted to get back about clean water. One thing that's been stuck in my mind for a long time. So, the story, is my parents both in Iowa both passed away of cancer. My dad at 54 and my mom at 67 years old. And my story, and I've said this many times, is no different than so many people across this state. And the one thing that I keep seeing all the time is, and all we hear all the time in the news now, is nitrates in the water, nitrates, like all the time. But I want you to point out, because I know, going to these reports that I've been to, that it's not just nitrates that are hurting us. It's not just nitrates in the water. What I want you to talk about is the other issues with our water quality, the other things, the pesticides, the other things that are in there that people might not know. Because what I keep seeing, Chris, is people going home and testing their nitrate water and be like, well, I'm good, and then thinking they're perfectly good. So I want you to talk a little bit about the other side of it that are we're dealing with, not just the manure runoffs, but what other things we're dealing with.
So cancer is, you can get cancer from a lot of different exposures, right? And so it's probably never going to be just one thing. And so, yeah, we've known for a long time that drinking high nitrate water is a risk for cancer. We've known that for 25 years. But we see here nowadays, we have this D-Day invasion of crop dusters in Iowa, especially this time of year. They're just starting to come out right now. We're all just constantly breathing in stuff that's been sprayed on crops, the fungicides and other herbicides. Every person in Iowa is being exposed to that, either through their water or through inhalation, right? And we have contact recreation. And so we have these big blue-green algae blooms that we see every summer. They make our beaches, their state park beaches and the state park lakes practically unusable. Well, there's a health risk for that, right? And so exposure to these blue-green algae toxins that result from these things, that's a public health risk in terms of cancer, Lou Gehrig's disease, and some other things. And so there's lots of things that we're exposed to. We're exposed to a whole menu of chemicals here. And what are the additive effects of these exposures? Well, it's difficult to quantify that. But we know there's risks here. We know for sure there's risks. And I think we can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that some of this cancer here is a result of environmental exposure to production agriculture. I mean, we know that. But, can I say that 3,000 deaths are caused by Roundup and 2,000 by nitrate? And no, no one can do that. But we know that this assortment or this whole cocktail of things that we're exposed to is a risk to the public health. And this is what I say. Look, if we know if we know there's a risk and we know how to reduce that risk, then why don't we reduce the risk, right? If we know there's a risk and we know we can reduce it through policy, why aren't we doing it? Well, I'll tell you, it's because someone's making money, right, with the activity that's associated with that risk, and they care more about their money than they do about reducing risk. That, in a nutshell, is the issue here in Iowa with agriculture and the public health.
My last question before I let Dr. Bob get to you. My last question. If you're elected as your our next Secretary of Ag here in Iowa, your top three priorities or top three things that you want to get done to make sure that Iowans are living a better life.
Well, as I said, we need a different strategy here for water quality. What we have now, where we're uh, sprinkling $1 million here and $1 million there and $1 million over yonder on these Band-Aid and diaper conservation projects, it has not worked. It has not worked. We've done this for 40 plus years. The water has just gotten worse in many places and in many aspects. And so it hasn't worked. We need a different strategy here. And so we need to incentivize a more diverse farming system. And so I'll count that as one. Number two is local foods. People in Iowa have a desperate desire for local foods. They want that. In the United States, there's about, as a whole, we have about 16 acres of fruits and vegetables per 1,000 people. That's what we need in the United States. In Iowa, we have 2.2 acres of fruits and vegetables per 1,000 people, 8 times less than the nationwide average, on the best place on earth to grow stuff. So we have to import all our food from California and Florida and Chile and Texas and Arizona, and all that food is awash in preservatives, right? To get it here. And so, one thing with cancer is let's eat a healthy diet. Well, people think about fresh local foods that are not awash in chemical as being part of a healthy diet and as a part of a way to reduce cancer. And so local foods, especially for our schools, that's my second priority. The third priority is this thing with the pesticide drift. There's 14 bureaus in IDALS. One of them is the Pesticide Bureau. These reports of drift killing oak trees and fruit trees and vegetable crops and other field crops. They're legion. These reports are legion. People call out IDALS. They don't get out there in a timely manner. If the stuff's been applied by airplane, a lot of times, the guy flies in, sprays, and he's gone, right? And nobody knows what's happened except, maybe there's a fish kill in the stream because he sprayed it on the stream or he killed somebody's oak trees. IDALS does not get out and investigate these. They don't do good enough enforcement here. We need zealous enforcement of the existing pesticide rules here. We need zealous investigations to find out what's happening with these things. And we need to look at the licensing of pesticide application. And I'll just ask you, what do you think it costs in Iowa to get a commercial pesticide application license? What do you think it costs?
I would assume a lot more than the average farmer could afford.
$15.
That's it.
Wow. To get a commercial pesticide application license in Iowa. It's
so
$15.
Anybody can do it. So anybody is what you're saying.
For a farmer, if you're a private applicator, which is a farmer, it's $5. And so they have to take a test. I think the test costs $25. I had a woman in Northeast Iowa tell me the other day, she raises chickens. She sells meat chickens, a small scale, sells them locally. The license to refrigerate her chickens that she's selling for meat in her area, $400. $400. It's $5 to get a pesticide application.
Yeah.
And so the maximum fine, if they, we had this vegetable farmer down in Page County, just got sprayed, right? Killed $60,000 worth of his produce. The maximum fine for something like that's $500. So we need some zealous enforcement of the existing rules. We need some change in the whole program here when it comes to pesticide application. So those are my top three priorities.
It seems like a lot of common sense in the last one. Dr. Bob, last question.
Well, a couple of things. One is about an hour ago, this group I'm in, one of the young women in the group heard a plane coming. She lives out near Harlan and maybe in Harlan, but she heard a plane going by and she went outside and saw it was coming in low and she started videoing it. And then when she went outside, it came back a second pass. She got a face full of the spray. Okay. So that's the reality of living in rural Iowa.
Yeah.
The next part that I want to ask you is how can we help? What can we do specifically to help you become the next Secretary of Agriculture?
Well, of course, money is a big thing. Right now, I have about $100,000 in the bank. The campaign has 100,000 in the bank. Mike Negg, the incumbent, has about 700,000. And so we know that he's going to have a blank check at the end. Sometimes I say I almost regret my mother still being alive for what she's going to see on TV commercials about me in a couple months. But so we need funds, right? That's the name of the game. ChrisJonesForIowa.com. For is FOR. You can go there and donate through the website. You can donate on ActBlue. We have volunteers. I think already we have over 100 volunteers, and so we have volunteers doing parades, the summertime parades. We have volunteers doing farmers markets. I think we have tables at 14 farmers markets around Iowa. That's a fun thing for volunteers to do if they want to volunteer. And so I don't expect everybody to have the capacity to donate money, right? This is the story with Democratic politics. We have to raise money from rank and file people. Republicans don't have to worry about donating money because they know the oligarchs and the PACs are going to fund these campaigns. And so rank and file Republicans can sit back. Democrats can't. We have to fund our candidates. And so, but if you can't, don't have the resources to do that, that's great, but you can still volunteer. So that's how you can help. The other thing is most people have a circle of 7 people that they talk to fairly regularly. Talk to those 7 people. Convince them, that my campaign is something they should take a look at, something they might want to consider and might want to consider voting for me. In the near term, I found out yesterday I'm going to be on MS Now on Sunday night. You can check that out. I don't have the time yet, but I'll post it on my socials. Politico also did an article on me recently, and it was on the cover of their magazine. I think it's a real nice piece. It talks about some other candidates in Iowa, including Zach Lane and Rob Sand and some others. And so I'd invite you to check that out. I still write for my Substack. That's riverraccoon.substack.com. I have not been writing as frequently here as I've been a candidate because I just don't have the time and energy to do it the way I used to. But I'm still writing stuff there, and so I encourage you to go there and read that. I do not beg people for paid subscriptions, and so especially now that I'm running for office, nothing's behind a paywall, and so anybody can read that stuff for free. Also, my book is The Swine Republic. Again, if you don't want to buy it, most local libraries have it, and that talks about all these issues with agriculture and water quality.
Chris
Great,
Jones,
thank
Chris Jones, candidate for Secretary of Iowa Agriculture. Chris Jones, one thing that we pride ourselves on here at Sage Against the Machine is speaking truth to power, being blunt, being honest, and that is what we get every time we talk with you. And every time I've heard you speak, you talk about frustration, but the bluntness is there, and that's what I really, really appreciate about you. I appreciate you making time in your day to come on and talk with myself and Dr. Bob and his beard that looks like a monkey's butt, but I appreciate you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Okay. All right. Thanks for having me. Good
Yep,
luck
no
with
problem.
everything. Yep. See ya.
See ya. And again, thank you to Chris Jones, a candidate for Iowa Secretary of Agriculture, for joining us on Sage Against the Machine podcast. Like I said earlier, he is a man that speaks bluntly about the frustrations going on in Iowa, and I appreciate him a lot. I know Dr. Bob, you've known him for a while, and that's, I remember I can actually say Dr. Bob Leonard is the person that was like, you need to talk to Chris, like when I was when I was going to be a candidate. You need to talk to Chris. You need to talk about water quality. Dr. Bob, you were that person that was very adamant that Chris Jones is the guy that people need to listen to.
He's helped define the race.
Yeah,
I mean, for
absolutely.
everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But we'll get to now's our time on the Sage Against the Machine podcast to get to the headlines that matter to us, headlines that should matter to you as well, that stand out to me. I have a couple headlines, but I also had an email and a headline just pop up that I'm going to read as well. But we'll get to the national headline that I have first. It's Saudi nuclear agreement sparks debate. The Trump administration proposed civilian nuclear agreement with Saudi Arabia is facing bipartisan scrutiny in Congress over non-proliferation, I can't say it, safeguards, oversight, and U.S. national security interests. I want to get your thoughts first off, Dr. Bob, when you hear about that agreement before anything, and then I'll talk about my thoughts. So your thoughts when it comes to Donald Trump making a nuclear agreement with the Saudis.
Well, first, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, how is his family tied into it to make money off of it? I'm sure they have that all set up. This is another scam by him. And then, I'm old enough to remember that on 9/11, most of the terrorists were Saudis. I mean, now they're Trump's buddies, and no, it's something his family's going to make money off of, and Saudi Arabia is a nuclear power. I don't have any problem, I guess, with. Well, nuclear power is complex, but if you have nuclear power, how far is it before you have a nuclear weapon? So
Yeah. So I'm reading part of the article now, and it says the U.S. and Saudi Arabia on Wednesday forged a new agreement that could potentially provide the kingdom with uranium enrichment capabilities for its civilian nuclear program. U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright, a Saudi Minister of Energy Abduz, I can't say his name, bin Salam, formally signed the nuclear cooperation agreement known as 123 agreement alongside what Trump, the administration, described as a bilateral safeguard agreement. It just blows my mind. Like when I read that, when I see it, when I had it pop up on my phone about an email about it, because I get those email breaking news stuff. The first thing I thought it was, like you just said, was 9/11, right? And I'm not saying that the Saudi Arabian government is to blame for 9/11, but I think it was 9 of the terrorists were Saudi origin, and I just think it's insane to think that we are in the middle of destroying a Middle Eastern country, or trying to destroy a Middle Eastern country. It hasn't gone very well for this administration. They've tried, but they keep closing the Strait of Hormuz. And now I think today I saw gas barrels of oil are back up to 100, so we're gonna $100, so we're going to see high gas prices again. I just think it's utterly insane that we're going to bomb a country and say you can't enrich your uranium and you can't do this when we had an agreement before with them. What's the difference here? What's the difference between Obama's agreement with Iran and enriching uranium and what they were trying to do and making their safeguards, and this agreement with Saudi Arabia and the Trump administration? Here's what I see as the difference. What you just said, Dr. Bob, it's a blatant way to make sure that Donald Trump and his family and his friends are getting more money hand over fist over and over and over. They're selling the soul of America any way they can, any portion of they can, to make sure that they continue to get money and their friends can continue to get money. And the blatant hypocrisy of that is a laughing joke, but also at the same time very scary. Because at what point do we have to get into a skirmish with this government and with this, and they're a lot bigger than Iran and a lot more powerful, and a lot more money involved in that. So I fear for the future generations that are going to have to deal with this, because we have somebody at the wheel that shouldn't be at the wheel right now. So that is my first instinct when I saw this. It worries me, and I feel like most people, this is something that that's what's really frustrating, is that this is something that we have in America just gotten used to. With this administration, this continued chaos, and this continue of another news story of like, here we go again. What the hell is going on? And we just accept it as everyday life, and this is the way it's supposed to be. And that's why we're doing what we're doing, and that's why I want more people to continue, and that's why we need good candidates, and that's why we're trying to fight for working class people, because the only way we're ever going to fix the problem we have in this country is to get people in office, the presidency, the Senate, the Congress, everybody that actually is there to serve people and fight for the American people, not just say they are and then sell us out.
I have a question for you.
Yeah,
Do you think that Saudi Arabia wants nuclear weapons?
I would assume so. I would
Of course
assume
they
being where they are and the hatred they have for so many other countries around them that they would love to have that as a threatening tactic. Absolutely.
absolutely. They want a nuclear weapon. And Trump just said, here's your first steps. Here you
Yeah,
go. Here's the
thanks for the
uranium.
huge plane. Thanks for the new Air Force One. Now here you go, and now you can go kill as many people and potentially threaten as many countries as you want.
Well,
Yeah,
that was Qatar, but anyway,
yeah,
your point's the same.
yeah.
The
So,
investments in the crypto. Yeah.
well, he's been Donald Trump has been tied to I think it's the prince there. They and Jared Kushner and all of that. They're all mixed in that intermingling of ways to defile and take our money.
And
Is what it seems.
was that the prince that had the Washington Post journalist killed?
I don't know if it is, but it
Yes.
is scary. So,
No, it's
right?
all wrong. It's all
Yeah,
wrong.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I wanted to make sure we talked about it because it's again pointing out the hypocrisy that we continue to see across this government, across this administration with Donald Trump and the Republicans literally selling our soul. And that's why we talk more and more about Ashley Hinton and talk about Marionette Miller Meeks and Feenstra and all and Grassley, all of them who are enabling this. And it's something I've talked about before. Again, it's you're not to blame, but you are if you're enabling the action to continue. And that is what we continue to see from our representatives here in Iowa. And that's why we need to clean slate and actually represent the people that are actually trying to fight for us, to serve the people and treat us like human beings. So, again,
And
just
it's more
another.
than yeah, sorry to interrupt. I thought you were going to go on to something
No, yeah,
else, and I don't want you to quite yet. It's more than hypocrisy. It's more than corruption. It's betrayal. It is
absolutely.
betrayal. Absolute total betrayal. Thank you.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. It just continues to happen. And that's what I keep saying is like we're just used to at this point and we're used to being selling so it's like and that's what's really frustrating for me, Dr. Bob, is we sit there and we see it, we talk about it, we know what's going on, we can feel it, we think critically of it, but it's the people that just say just it's the people that give them a pass that if a Democrat was doing this, if Obama was doing this, if anybody else was doing the stuff that we're doing, so many people would be losing their minds that are not losing their minds right now because they're propagandized against and they're told this is the way that we need to do things to make things right. And at the end of the day, the question I want everybody to keep asking themselves is this simple question is what have they done for you? What have they done for you? What part of your life has gotten better with the administration that we've had? What part of that is actually what have you gained? Because for most Americans and most people across the state and most people just in general, they haven't gained anything, and you get this response from these people of like, you just got to give it time. Why do we got to give them time, but you didn't give Obama time? Why do we got to do that? So it's this complete hypocrisy bullshit that I'm just done with. So moving right along to our next headline that matters. Make sure I pulled up the right screen. There it is. Iowa more Iowans traveling out of state for abortion services. New reports show more Iowa residents are traveling outside the state to access abortion care. The issue continues to be one of the biggest political dividing lines in Iowa, affecting healthcare providers, families, and candidates heading into the 2026 election. A major Iowa political issue that candidates on both sides will have to address. So, one thing that we talked about recently on the Sage Against the Machine podcast was the closing of the clinics. Planned Parenthood clinics in Iowa, making it harder for women to get the care they need. But of course, that's what when you pull away the things that somebody needs, they still need them, Dr. Bob. They still need to be able to get the services they need to survive and make it in this world. And so when you pull those out of the state, all you're doing is giving those people that need those services a reason and a ticket to leave. That is what you're doing. And I believe, just me, that it's by design. I think what Republicans want is they want their homeland. They want their state that's all theirs, and they don't want anybody else that's going to disagree with them in their area. And that is the most sickening and disturbing thing, because for a lot of people, we can't just leave. For a lot of people, we love this state and we love the people around. We can't just get up and leave, but we still need the services we need. So it's not about governing for everybody. It's about governing for one specific group. And when you do that, you see the issues that we're having, and we will continue to have those issues until we start representing everybody and fighting for everybody, not just one group.
It's interesting. This morning I saw somebody, Raymond Baker. If you don't follow Raymond Baker on Twitter, he's really fantastic. And he's was posting about Zach Lane this morning. One of the statements of Zach Lane is that if we want a bigger workforce, we need more children in Iowa. So this is all part of that grand plan to have more children. They don't want any immigrants. They want a larger workforce. I think he used labor workforce in the argument. So women need to have more babies. That's what Zach Lane is saying, when women should be deciding themselves in consultation with their partner how many babies they want to have. And so the anti-abortion stuff, the discrimination against women, assaults on women's rights across the country, it's all part of a plan to keep women barefoot and pregnant. This is all, and then it's all tied in with, their form of Christianity. Notice the air quotes, and it's right out of The Handmaid's Tale. All this trad wife stuff. It's just they're trying to bend women to their, I don't know, their perspective of what a good Christian family should be. They're bending women that way. They're bending all of us and forcing all of this worldview on us. They're forcing us into their ideology, their beliefs. There is no freedom in the Republican Party. It's not about freedom. It's about freedom for them to make us do what they want us to do. And it's having devastating consequences. We've already seen it. Women are dying. Young people are leaving the state. Over all of these issues that you alluded to earlier, it's the opposite of freedom. It's the enforcement of a minority religious belief.
Hold on one second, Dr. Bob. I had something pop up on my screen on my. I had something pop up, so we'll continue on with what you were saying on my.
No, that's all right. I'm at
audio.
the end. It's just, yeah. This isn't in the best interest of women. It's not in the best interest of Iowans. It's just, yeah. It's. And women are dying, and forced births, and
Well, here's what I got to say to this. You mentioned that Zach Land wants people to wants women across the country. Donald Trump, they're trying to incentivize families to have more babies and everything. And here's the simple thing to say to this, and it gets me fired up every time I talk about this. If you want people to have more babies, then make it fucking affordable to have the baby, and make it easier for them to get to the health care they need. So if they need to go to the hospital, how many birthing centers are closing across Iowa? Have we talked about that in rural Iowa? Have we talked about the amount of clinics that are closing that they don't want to talk about are closing? That is the issue. We have these people in power that sit there and go, they need to have more babies so we can have, here's the truth, more people in the workforce to keep using as slave labor, not paying them enough money to make sure that we can continue to make money while they don't make money. They want us to have babies so we can populate the next person in the industrial line to make sure that they are continuing on making money. That is the only reason. I think I saw a study that said, I don't know this right statistic, I think it was around 30% of women under 40 aren't having kids anymore, or under 30 maybe, that aren't having children because they can't afford it. And you think that these people think that we are all stupid. They think we're fucking stupid. And the reality of it is, we're smarter than they think we are because we are not having the kids because we can't afford it. You can't make it in America anymore in a family of four like you used to in 1990. It is not capable. You're not capable of doing it anymore. And I don't know what has to be shown to these idiots to make it prove that we can't do it. But I'm so tired of talking about this. I'm so tired of listening to these assholes talk about, oh, we need to have more babies. The only reason you want more babies is because you want more slave labor. That is the only reason you want more babies. That's it.
Well, and a part of that is don't fund public education. They want us uneducated. They know their children can go anywhere that they want.
Yep.
Our children and grandchildren, can't. And then they're funding the religious schools, undermining the public schools. That's not only do they want a larger workforce, they want a worse educated workforce. That's part of the plan. The defending of public schools is part of that same plan, and the support of the private Christian schools.
I agree with you, and I'll say this. I'll even add to it. I think that they really want is boys born. They don't want girls born. They want boys born. They want they don't, because what they want, they want women born, but they want women in the household. They want women home, staying home like they did in the 1950s, raising the family like this so the man can go out there and make money. Because when you look at it and you really look at it, it's like, why is childcare so damn expensive, right? Because at the end of the day, they want you to be teaching your kids, and they want you to be in that homestead, making sure you're doing the right thing as a woman, cooking, cleaning, being in the kitchen, and not being a productive member of society that we want you to be. That is the like you said, Christian way of thinking. That or if it's not, I'll say this: if it's not, someone explain to me how it's not. Because from what I see, it just continues to see the same bullshit over and over and over of, we're going to want you to have kids. We're not going to give you any other options. We're going to make it life extremely expensive. And the only way you're going to be able to live in this world is if you do A, B, C, D in our book, in our playbook, while everybody else. So you have to live their way. And if you don't live their way, you're shit to them. If you don't believe in them, you're shit to them. So, and that's, again, goes back to, they're not here governing for all. They're governing for that one specific group, the people that, and they want you to be a part of that group. So then you can say, hey, I'm governing for you. That's the bullshit.
They want girls too, because you can only increase the population if you increase the population of girls too.
Yeah.
Men are redundant. Women
that's what you just said, Dr. Bob, is debatable. I mean, if you went to Grindr and you figured out who all the Republicans are that are sneaking around on Grindr, I think that would be debatable. But that's for another topic of discussion. Got to get to the next thing I wanted to bring up is a headline that literally just popped up, on my phone. This is from Iowa Workers Almanac with the Iowa starting line for today. It says, ICE detained 1,779 Iowans in 2025, a new report shows. Nearly 1,800 Iowans were detained by Immigration and Custom Enforcement in 2025 alone, with nearly 90% of them deported, according to a new report from the statewide immigration advocacy group. It has a quote from the group, but it talks about how they are very much ICE have kept climbing. The arrests have kept climbing nationwide, reaching a new high of more than 1,500 per day in July. Like I said, when it gets hot, that's when they get busy. Meanwhile, Decorah residents who want their elected officials to stop the carnage keep pushing for reform, even if its officials don't listen. And it says that they'll continue to rise because that's, again, what I talked about, is they are continuing to do things. And here in Iowa, if you have 1,800, what it says is they're very much in Iowa doing it, but a lot of people aren't seeing that. So when you see the viral video that we covered of the girl in Cedar Rapids, that's what we're talking about. Things are going on every day in Iowa that we're just not seeing, or that are not popping up in the news. So we have to keep speaking out about it and keep talking about it. What are your thoughts, Dr. Bob?
Well, first, thank God for the Iowa starting line. They do a really great job covering this kind of thing, and thank you for citing them, giving them the credit for it. On Deep Midwest, my Substack, I've got an interview with Elena, public relations person with the Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice. I'll post today or tomorrow to give us some more details on what is exactly happening in Iowa. And we're talking about people that don't have papers to be here. We're talking about people that do, that have papers to work, they have all the appropriate documents, and we're talking about people that are legal. And so this is a sort of, again, I'm going to say ICE, these untrained people, it's structural, state-sponsored structural violence against Iowans and across the nation. So, yeah, thank you, Iowa Starting Line.
Now, the last thing I wanted to get on here for today is normally I would do Dr. Bob Leonard. I would normally do what is making Nathan cuss. And I don't want to do that today because I came across a clip from the Iowa GOP of our favorite Jeff Kaufman being Jeff Kaufman. So I'll give you context. He is talking about Josh Turek missing votes in the Iowa House this year, including a farm bill. He says Iowa needs to. Josh Turek has obviously said we need to pass a farm bill. He said he missed the vote on the farm bill. It's Jeff Kaufman being Jeff Kaufman. And the reason this popped up to me, and the reason I wanted to cover it, and the reason I wanted to talk about it was because this idiot is talking about he's being Jeff Kaufman. He's being loud. He's being boisterous. He's being arrogant, and he's talking about someone missing these votes. And he's talking about Josh Turek missing these votes. And for me, okay, so the thing I want to talk about with this, and the reason I wanted to bring it up, and the reason I wanted to chat about it, was because today on this episode of the Sage Against the Machine podcast, I wanted to introduce a new segment. I don't know if I'll do this every week or if I'll do it, every once in a while. It's maybe when I see an idiot talk. And today it's Idiot of the Week, and that is Jeff Kaufman, in charge of the Republican Party here in Iowa. Jeff Kaufman is known for being boisterous and known for being arrogant, but to me, he is a complete and utter idiot all the time, like most of the people that I've seen. And here's why. Because he's talking about missing votes. He's talking about people doing this. He's talking about Josh Turek specifically. And here's the thing, this, Dr. Bob, more than anything, in Iowa, the House, the Senate, everything is controlled by the Republicans. Is it not, Dr. Bob?
It is, absolutely.
Absolutely. So you're telling me, because it's such a majority, I know missed votes is a thing, but at the end of the day, wouldn't you guys be doing what the fuck you want to be doing anyway? So you're just trying to find reasons to shit on Josh Turek when we still can't afford life, when Iowa's economics are 49th or 48th in personal economic growth, where we are seeing this brain drain of all these young kids leaving the state, while we're seeing cancer rates at their highest, while we're seeing tariffs that are foreclosing on small family farms. We are seeing the destruction of our state, and you're boisterous up there talking about missing votes. So that's why, to me, Jeff Kaufman is the Idiot of the Week. He could be Idiot of the Month. He could be Idiot of the Year, and I'll continue to call him a fucking idiot because he is a fucking idiot. So what do I want to do to fucking idiots? I want to roast them. Congratulations, Jeff Kaufman, proving that you can help run Iowa politics for a year and still blame Democrats for everything. Jeff Kaufman looks like a guy who is always just asking questions while forwarding conspiracy theories from 2009. For someone who loves personal responsibility, every Republican problem somehow belongs to someone else. He looks like Ned Flanders getting promoted in regional manager, the guy who definitely knows the best place for pie within 50 miles. He looks like he owns 3 different calculators just in case. He has the facial hair of a 1987 softball coach. He looks like a human embodiment of a relaxed fit khaki pants. He smiles like he just remembered everyone's library books are overdue. He looks like he's been blaming the previous administration since the Clinton years. He looks like he could filibuster a conversation about mashed potatoes. He looks like he irons his blue jeans. He looks like he gives toothbrushes out on Halloween. He looks like he's never met a buffet he didn't respect. He looks like the final boss at the DMV. That is Jeff Kaufman to me, and I'm so fucking tired of hearing these Republican assholes across our state, these demagogues, these people that step up and say all this fucking bullshit that doesn't matter just to be able to distract you from the real issues. The real issue that we have in this state and across this country is the Republican Party is selling us out and destroying our families, destroying our way of living because they don't want to pay for anything. They want to make sure their people are taken care of, while all of us here on the ground, all of us working class, to continue to struggle and continue to obey. That is the epitome of what Jeff Kaufman is, and he can go fuck himself. He is the Idiot of the Week. Any thoughts on that, Dr. Bob?
Yeah, what's wrong with relaxed fit khaki pants?
I'm just saying he looks like that. He also looks like the one that I love the most was the 1987 softball coach. Like that's what he looks like, is that mustache that he has. End of the day,
I don't.
I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not interested in trashing people for appearances, but go ahead.
But here's the deal. Here's the deal. Here's what I'll say to that. He will shit on anybody they want. They want to bring up all these social war, cultural war arguments. They want to talk. Dr. Bob, for instance, today I went on our former radio website page, our Facebook page, and one of the first comments, because they had a story about Marion County is going to be opening up their Democratic office today, grand opening, and one of the first comments was, "Do they have separate bathrooms and do they have safe spaces for people?" Because that's the running joke that they want to keep putting out there. They are more obsessed with what's between my legs and what's between your legs and what's between a woman's legs and what bathroom they do and what they do in the back in their bedroom on their own personal time than they do about actually fixing the issues in Iowa. And they want to gloat about it. And the thing that I was saying about that clip more than anything is he continues to boisterous yelling stupid argument while everybody in the room has heard it so many damn times they're not paying attention. So to me, find a new tactic because it's fucking old. You look like a 1987 softball coach. We need to do something different in Iowa, and we can't keep listening to people like this that care more about giving rich more money than they do about everyday Iowans that are struggling in this state.
Okay, great points. Okay, so let's go through this video a little bit. First, you saying nobody's paying attention. That's absolutely true, which is they've heard it so many times. It's almost so predictable. One of the things that struck me about that conversation, or that, him berating everybody and him going on and on with all that bluster, is he starts off with something like, now I'm not making this up. These are statistics. He yells it, but that's what his words said. He had to warn us that he was telling the truth for once. I'm not making this up. This are real statistics. So every other time, we can just expect lies and bullshit from him, which is all true. Okay, what you had to say about Josh missing those votes is absolutely right. They won't even listen to what Democrats have to say. They won't bring forward a bill. The votes won't matter. I'd rather Josh Turek was out campaigning, quite frankly, trying to be our next senator. And then, and it's just disingenuous as well. I mean, there's Republicans, when they're running for office too, they aren't there for every vote unless it's absolutely needed. Now, there's lots more to say about that clip, but the thing that bothers me the most as a former academic is that Jeff Kaufman has a history degree. He has a PhD in history. He teaches history at a community college in Muscatine.
I feel sorry for his students.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I'm not going to go into the fact that his academic record of publishing is just pretty bad. So, I mean, he's not contributing at that level. But his dissertation was on public schools, something about public schools, the history of public schools. But the day that Republicans were taking away the rights of transgender Iowans, including the right to be able to rent a home. That very day, there were thousands of trans people and their supporters at the Iowa State Capitol. And outside were two Nazis. And I went up to talk to the two Nazis. Well, Jeff Kaufman, the Republican Party, he's a history professor, yet he should know about being on the wrong side of history. This is the Republican Party that is erasing Black history, and minority history, and minority contributions. And he's a history professor. He's a pretty shitty one, or he wouldn't be letting all of this happen. But the Nazis, I went and I interviewed them, because if there's Nazis there in masks, who's going to interview them? It's me. And so I talked with them, and they were saying, we need to put all of these trans people and gay people, we need to get them out of here. Maybe we should put them on reservations. And I said, you mean concentration camps? And they said, sure. And all the brown people need to go back to where they come from, back to the countries where their ancestors come from. And so the Nazis were telling me these horrible things that they would do to transgender people, and Jeff Kaufman helping make this happen. And I said, America disagrees with you. Most Americans don't want this to happen. What you're proposing is horrific, and we don't want this to happen. He says, oh, yes, they do. They all want this to happen. The majority of Americans want this to happen. They just showed you that by electing Donald Trump.
Yep.
Okay. So in this mix, Jeff Kaufman, student of history, is on the wrong side of it, as is every Republican elected official in this country. And we need to never forget that.
And that I agree with you so much. I love the way you said that. And that is the frustrating thing is how many times, Dr. Bob, have you heard it? I know I've heard it. Well, I didn't vote for this. Okay, like, okay. Well, you saw what he said. You saw Project 2025. You know what has been the rhetoric. You heard him at the debate saying that they're eating cats, they're eating dogs. You've heard the way they speak about this, and you didn't think that this was going to happen. So to me, that makes me think you're an idiot. But if I call you that, then you're going to get mad at me. So how the hell do we tell somebody that you're stupid for not necessarily seeing the writing on the wall?
We don't tell them that they were stupid. You know, the esteemed old person, Charlie Cook, author of the Cook Political Report, which predicts races, he said something that makes me really mad, and I might write about it. He was an Iowa Writers Collaborative, one of Julie Gamick's Monday things. He said, when asked about Trump, he said, oh, it's all bluster. Charlie Cook, it's all bluster. Our friends and people in MAGA have been, and it's not bluster. Look at all the things that he's done, that he said he was going to do, you know, ripping the Constitution to shreds, the tariffs, the total manipulation of our history, destruction of science, cancer research, educational institutions. It's just all there. And to attribute it to bluster is a mistake, especially like Charlie Cook. I might have to write this. But the thing is, I know people that just say, oh, that's just Trump. He's never going to invade Greenland. So people think that it's just bluster because it's been, they have a permission structure to say it's bluster. And then in this saying that it's bluster, you also have the MAGA media, Fox News, OAN, Newsmax, lying to them day in, day out. Listen to the lies that come across WHO radio here out of Des Moines. Lies, permission structures to call it bluster. We say, you were fooled. You were lied to. You were lied to by the media. You were lied to by Donald Trump. Welcome aboard. Help us save America. No, they were misled. That has to be the attitude. We can think, and we know some people that have embraced this. We have friends that have embraced it, family members or whatever, that we think that they sort of glorify in the cruelty. And for those people, I'm going to say you're cruel. You like being cruel. But for everybody else, we welcome them with open arms.
I agree, and I say I've said that before, even on the campaign trail. Is like we understand you were lied to. Being lied to is hard to deal with, but also what I want, and I think what a lot of people across this country want, not just Democrats but independents, just general human beings. I think people want personal accountability. I think people want people to say, not say that necessarily. You're not going to hear them say they're sorry, but to say, yeah, I was lied to. I believed in something that wasn't true. Like that's what people generally, I think, want, and that's what we're not getting, and that's what we won't get, and that is what's frustrating for a lot of people. And the other thing I'll say is that I saw actually our candidate that we're having on next week on Thursday, Jared Christian, said that he's very. I'm going to ask him about this next week, but he said I'm very worried about when the new administration come in, they do this whole thing where they say fuck all, and they just change, like blatantly just get rid of everything, change everything, make everything, back to what it is or whatever. I agree that a lot of that needs to happen. I think there's a lot of issues and things we're seeing across the country, but what he was basically saying, what he's worried about is that it makes that pendulum that we talk about go back and forth, and it's like, when are we going to get to a point in America where because I think he may also said that the longest one political party has been in power has been like 12 years. Like, and it keeps changing. That's what we do in America. So when are we going to get to a point where we are all on the same page on how we feel about immigration, how we feel about affordability, how we feel about our world and our country in general? Because I feel like this, and we talked about this, Dr. Bob. I feel like everybody in this country, the Republican side and the Democrat side, we're all patriots. We all love this country. The reason we're speaking, the reason we're doing, and the reason we're protesting, the reason we're trying to come to do the things we're doing is because we do love this country. We just see it in two different views on the path on where we want this country to be and where we want to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So when do we get to that point of we're finally together in this, and our government is understanding us to where we're kind of living in harmony. And I the thing that I always keep trying to say is I don't think we're ever going to get there until we actually have proper representation. That's the whole thing. We have to have working class people. We have to have people that can speak about issues in a different light than someone who has been raised with a silver spoon in their mouth and doesn't understand what struggle really is. And so I just, yeah, I don't know, but
Well, you're optimistic. I think that is a path where we get real representation. But as long as there's money to be made off of war and off of a division and making us hate each other, it's
it's
going to be
sick.
there. Yeah, it's sort of inevitable, and it's just
Yeah,
like the only time. I mean, you could expect some national tragedy like 9/11 to bring us together, but we don't want that. And that's proved to be only temporary. But there's too much money to be made off of making us hate each other.
absolutely. And that's what's sickening. And that's what our downfall is people in America, or just general. It seems like more people care more about the dollar than they do about their daughter, or more about their dollar than they do about their wife. Like they care more about money than they do about just enjoying life with your family and friends, and getting the best out of your life, and being a human being. And that is what is disheartening for so many people, and that's why I am doing what I'm doing, and you're doing what you're doing, and so many other people across the state and across this country continue to speak truth to power, and continue to speak up, because that is the only way we're going to change things. Is we got to shine a light on them. So, yeah, any last thoughts, Dr. Bob?
Well, I like that little voice of optimism. It's like, and when we can all afford to do that,
Yes,
and we've
yes.
broken the oligarchs, their stranglehold on us. When we can afford to do that, then maybe there will be less division. We can see our neighbors, no matter what color they are, what race, ethnicity, religion, whatever, that we can share our commonality. But it's only when we have transportation, we have food, we have basic standard of living. When everybody can afford to take a week-long vacation again, maybe that's what we can you know hope
Yeah,
for. That might
yeah.
bring the unity, but it's not going to happen until we stop the oligarchs from squeezing every last penny out of us.
Do you know how many week-long vacations I've been on in my prior to my adulthood, when I was a kid? How many week-long vacations I was on in my life as a child?
None.
One. It was in seventh grade, and my parents saved up. We went to our vacation was from Mason City to Minneapolis, and we went to the Como Zoo because it was free. We went to the places to save money. We went to Valley Fair, and we ate sandwiches and drank waters in the parking lot because we couldn't afford the food there. But it was still one of the best experiences of my life. And yeah, I wish more and more people, and that's what brought our family more together. So yeah, we got to make it where people can actually live in this world, live in this country. So, wanted to say thank you to Iowa Secretary of, candidate for Iowa Secretary of Ag, Chris Jones, for being on. I appreciate his bluntness. As I said before, I've heard him speak many, many times. He is so great. Delivering his passionate speech in the future of water quality and just farming and how things are in Iowa. So I appreciate Chris for joining us and being a part. I will preview to next week. Next week we have some great guests coming on. Tuesday, Dr. Bob, you know who we have?
Nope.
Okay, Tuesday we got Iowa State Representative Caitlin Dray joining us on the
Okay.
show. She won that special election. She's up for re-election. I am excited. She battled cancer during this last session. So I'm excited for Caitlin. What people don't know, and I will mention this next week on the show, Caitlin actually interviewed me in Sioux City when I was doing a town hall there, and then she actually introduced me to the crowd. That was my first ever interaction with Caitlin, and then it just went forward with there. She's a great person. Excited to have her on. And then on Thursday, like I said, we have our first national guest, which will be Jared Christian for Ohio. He's running in Congress for Ohio District 12 in Ohio. So excited to have Jared Christian on as well. Get his experience, his thoughts process. The one thing I like about Jared, if you look him up on Facebook, Dr. Bob, he talks like me, so he does cuss. So we're gonna have a great conversation. It's gonna be a good time. And they reached out. They wanted to be a part of the Sage Against the Machine podcast. So excited to have him on. Again, every episode coming up on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 p.m. That's when we do it live. That's when we do it, and that's when it drops. But yeah, please share, subscribe, and like. Share our stuff on social media, but also go to Substack and subscribe. You don't want to miss out. We are going to be doing some breaking news opportunities. I'll jump on whenever we get some stories, and if you're subscribed, you'll be the only ones that get those. So there's additions to being a subscriber. We appreciate you. But yeah, we're trying to build this. We're trying to build this movement. We're trying to keep the Sage Against the Machine going and make sure that we're fighting and speaking truth to power. Dr. Bob Leonard, any last words before I say goodbye?
Nope, just thank you. Thank you, everybody. Please subscribe, share, restack, whatever you can do to, if you enjoy what we're doing, please share. I think we're really making a difference. We're having conversations that nobody else has. Most people are too polite or restrained to have these kinds of conversations on the left, and not us.
With that, I'll say, hey, until next week, until Tuesday, catch you on the flippity flip.
No